Good evening. I'd like to call the Government Operations Committee to order on this wonderful Monday night of June 17th. Roll call, please. A little louder, please.
Sulkaitis.
Here.
Folks.
Here.
Bongard. Munns.
Here.
Lancioni.
Here.
Gem.
Here.
Petrula.
Here.
Wirbal.
Here.
Bessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here. First, I'd like a motion and a second for the omnibus items.
So moved.
Moved by Bessner, seconded by Wirbal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The item carries. Next up, we have item 5A. Bill Hanna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The first item under finance is related to a lumber tax. The city imposed a 2% lumber tax back in 2004. This was effective against lumber yards within the city. This tax was litigated and subsequently found to be unconstitutional in 2006. After the ruling, there was some correspondence to the affected entities that had to pay the tax, that the tax was no longer in effect. However, the tax was never formally removed from the city code. The attached ordinance tonight was simply remove the lumber tax from the city code and is essentially a cleanup item.
Any questions regarding this? No, I'm looking for a motion, a second to remove the lumber tax.
Motion to approve.
Moved by by Munns, seconded by Gem. Roll call, please.
Sulkaitis.
Yes.
Folks.
Yes.
Bongard. Munns.
Yes.
Lancioni.
Yes.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrula.
Yes.
Wirbal.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Next up is item 5B.
Item 5B is recommendation to approve the funding allocation request from the 708 Mental Health Board for the current fiscal year 24-25. As the committee is aware, the city levies a separate property tax for mental health services to support agencies providing mental health services to the residents of the city of St. Charles. The tax that was approved recently for 2023 was in the total amount of $660,000. The city has a 708 Mental Health Board who administers the funding application process and makes annual recommendations of allocations to the various agencies which apply for funding. Those recommendations are listed in the packet. And at this time, I would be happy to introduce the chair of that committee, Ms. Kaylin Paremba, to provide an overview of the funding recommendations and answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Please just state your name for the record.
Good evening. I'm Ricky Rivard. I'm the co-chair of the St. Charles Mental Health Board. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. I'm excited to present on behalf of the 708 Board our recommendation of approval of the funding allocation request for fiscal year 24-25. This year, in addition to the allocation, which I will present shortly, I want to highlight some of the accomplishments our team has achieved. We continue to fine-tune our application and rubric scoring process to objectively allocate funding to local agencies who share our vision and mission. Knowledge about the work we do is spreading among the community, as we had 22 agencies seeking grants, including one new applicant this year. I'd like to thank the rest of the board members, Chair Paremba, Alderperson Munns, and the rest of the team for their ongoing dedication to serving the residents of St. Charles. We are looking forward to collaborating with the Equity and Inclusion Committee to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to connect with these valuable service providers in our area. As you are aware, the 708 Mental Health Board was established by referendum by the City of St. Charles in 1985. The funding source has been discussed previously to me arriving here. We do have $666,000 allocated for recommended funding this evening. We had a total of $844,429 requested by our agencies. The board coordinates the funding request processes, which includes a thorough and detailed application, presentation, priority discussion, and an analysis of data for allocation discussion decisions for our 20 qualified agencies this year. Please see the attached listing in your packet for specifics. The mission of our board is to serve residents of St. Charles by supporting and funding local community-based, high-quality programs and services for residents with mental health needs, substance abuse needs, and developmental disabilities. In 2022, 4,081 St. Charles residents were served in programs funded through awards from the Mental Health Board. The agencies we work with accurately predicted the needs would continue to rise as we moved out of the pandemic. In 2023, 4,465 residents received services from one of our organizations listed in your packet. According to the Community Needs Assessment recently released by the Dunham Foundation, the Community Foundation of the Fox River, access to mental health services is a top concern for community members in Kane County. Over half of respondents cited cost of care and the long wait list as barriers to seeking mental health. Luckily, with the funding provided from these grants, agencies have reported being able to hire additional staff to reduce wait lists dramatically, bridge the Medicare funding gap, as well as offer services on a sliding scale or completely free of charge. 7 of our organizations have been recommended to receive more than $25,000 and will be highlighted. They are as follows. The Association for Individual Development is a human services agency that strives to meet the unique needs of those with developmental and intellectual disabilities, as well as behavioral and mental health challenges. We recommend $44,010. CASA Kane County is a volunteer organization that serves the best interests of abused and neglected children from birth to age 21. They recruit, train, and supervise community volunteers that serve as child's court-appointed special advocate and guardian ad litem in the courts. We recommend $31,424. The City of St. Charles Police Department requested funding for their full-time social worker who is embedded in the department and provides recovery support to individuals with behavioral, mental, and developmental health challenges. We recommend $59,568. We have also requested a return of monies from a different agency for not being appropriated properly, and we kindly request that once returned, those funds go to the St. Charles Police Department social worker salary, $5,020 from Scene 2. Ecker Center provides an array of outpatient mental health services, including crisis, psychiatry, and counseling services for adults, adolescents, and children. Ecker Center was able to open a crisis center in March with staffing available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We recommend $103,000 and $534,000. Lazarus House is a homeless shelter serving persons who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, serving men, women, and children connected to the Tri-City area. Sadly, homelessness for whole family units is on the rise in this economy. We recommend $51,869. Lighthouse Recovery Center provides substance abuse recovery services and critical social services to individuals in St. Charles, regardless of their ability to pay. Lighthouse has reported that substance abuse, relapse, and overdose continue to increase year over year. We recommend $57,618. Finally, Tri-City Family Services provides clients with psychiatric services, case management services, and crisis services to their clients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They treat adults, couples, families, adolescents, and children for counseling, family-based treatment for eating disorders, emotional wellness workshops, support groups, and employee assistance programs. In 2023, Tri-Cities Family Services served 1,144 St. Charles residents, more than doubling the 492 residents served in fiscal year 2022. We recommend for $189,591. Do you have any questions for any of the attendees receiving over $25,000?
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have one question. You mentioned something about Scene 2, the $5,000. Could you explain that again? What's going on with that?
A little bit. I'll do my best. What happened was last year they had requested funding for a program. The program wasn't properly followed through on, and the money was it's still yet to be spent.
Okay.
So we've requested that it be returned and then allocated to the police department to make up the difference from what was requested to what was approved.
And they're aware of all of that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Looking for, go ahead.
I'm just curious, there are a couple, there were some requests, but for several years, or at least this year, it was denied. There were no funding approved. Not to get into any details, did they not complete, typically do they not complete their application, or is there something that precludes them?
That's a great question. There were 2 agencies that weren't funded. The first is the Elgin Youth Symphony Orchestra, and while it's a wonderful mission, it doesn't clearly align with our goals or our values of the 708 board. The second is the second agency that wasn't funded is Second Act Scene 2, and that was just a conflict of interest with their overarching organization, and the the line between the for-profit and nonprofit aspect of it.
And what's King County United? That sounds like a soccer team, but
It's not. I don't have the packet in front of me, and I don't want to give them services that they don't actually have.
just curious. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Move for approval.
Second by Wirball, seconded by Folks, did you second, right? Yes. Roll call, please.
Kulturitis.
Yes.
Folks.
Yes.
Munns. Yes. Lansdowne.
Yes.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrula.
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Item 6A, we have Chief Keegan is going to make 2 presentations. Go ahead, Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you. So item 6A is a recommendation to approve a proposal for an A6 liquor license application for the 7-Eleven located at 1705 West Main Street. This, of course, is at the intersection of 17th and West Main. This appeared earlier this evening with the unanimous recommendation to move forward. This at one time was franchised, then it went back to corporate ownership, and now it's reverting back to a franchise. This has been functioning as a long-standing full-service convenience store in St. Charles for many years. An A6 license limits the hours of sale from 7 a.m. to midnight, and the square footage of the floor plan that allows for alcohol sales cannot exceed 10%. So of a 1,000 square foot store, only 100 square foot could be comprised for alcohol sales. Off-site consumption only in original packaging. The local manager has been selected, and the franchisee owns a trucking outfit out of the south suburbs in Orland Park. He is here. He did not make the Liquor Control Commission meeting, but either he or myself can answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Go ahead, Mark.
Is this liquor license the same as 7-Eleven on the east side of town?
Exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Looking for a motion and second. Moved by Gem, seconded by Folks. Roll call, please.
Kulturitis.
Yes.
Folks.
Yes.
Munns. Yes. Lansdowne.
Yes.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrula.
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes. All right, great. That motion carries. Next item up, sorry, I'm tripping over all my words tonight. Next item up is 6B. The petitioner is not here in person, but he is going to be on the phone, so if there is questions, we just kind of have to be patient with the dialogue going back and forth. But with that being said, Chief, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So item 6B is a proposal for a resolution for the Main Street closure for Insomnia Productions, which is a movie production. So Insomnia Productions seeks permission to film MR2 or Munger Road 2 from Tuesday, October 15th through Friday, October 18th, 2024. Nick Smith is online via Zoom, as is his team in person, Trevor and Paulina, to my left, to your right. The requests total 4 total days from roughly 4 p.m. to 5 a.m. from 7th Street to 5th Avenue. Sidewalk businesses and pedestrians are free to roam and remain open with periodic and intermittent closures. This route is very similar or substantially similar to our parades, 7th Street to 5th Avenue. IDOT requires a city resolution to formally adopt ahead of any permit review and approval process by the local municipality. So that's what tonight's recommendation is, or proposal rather. Should this be approved by City Council this evening, we, the city, would then assume responsibility for traffic directions, street closures, a detailed detour plan, and any signage that's required by IDOT. The legacy film Munger Road 1 sought closures on August 30th, August 31st, and September 1st of 2010. They only utilized one of those nights, and Main Street was closed from 6 p.m. till 8 a.m. That cost incurred by the city was $7,900, and that was an in-kind donation 14 years ago. By contrast, the killer film, which was done last year, was over 4 nights and incurred about $70,000 in police overtime and about $112,000 in total costs, to include fire and public works overtime and then electrical costs borne by the city. Public works will outsource signage and barricade requests, and the PD costs are preliminary at this point. As I mentioned, the parade route typically starts at 7th Street to 5th Avenue. This is what the production company is requesting. That's a total of 12 city blocks. So at minimum, that's going to require 24 police officers, one on each side of the street, if you will, and then a couple officers to roam. So we are conservatively suggesting that anywhere between 22 and 27 uniformed police officers be present for the 13-hour filming and setup. We are only seeking a resolution this evening, and this is a precursor to any IDOT consideration. Other approvals, including costs and additional planning and signage and whatnot from the city, will be brought back to City Council at a later date. We anticipate about a 90-day review process by IDOT, which is why this is being taken to the city committee this evening. Once again, further consideration will advance as production and planning also advances. Commander Tim Okasik is here from the police department to answer any questions. He did a lot of the meetings with the production company, and then once again, Nick Smith is online along with Trevor and Paulina. So with that, any of us can answer any questions you might have.
Chief, just for clarity real quick, can you repeat it again? This for tonight, this is only for the road closure request. It has nothing to do with anything else, correct?
Yeah, so that's correct. So typically when we close Main Street or petition the state to close Main Street, the city does a resolution, and then that's forwarded to the IDOT office in Schaumburg, and then there's a permit review process. Typically, IDOT will not consider any road closures unless the municipality supports that cause with a resolution, which is what's before you this evening.
Thank you, Chief. I'll open up the questions now. Go ahead, Mr. Polk.
And Chief, I'm not trying to make you repeating the same thing. I just want to make sure I'm on the same wavelength here. So if the council tonight kind of goes through and approves this, and I guess maybe Mr. Smith can go answer this too, are they under the impression then that council is behind this project and these closures moving forward? I guess that's kind of the question I'm looking for answer tonight, because what I don't want to do is tell somebody to go through all this process, come back, and if council is not for something like this, then it gets completely shot down and we've just wasted a lot of time.
Sure. You know, so that permitting process, and I've told Mr. Smith and his team this, that permitting process is going to be rather in-depth. Again, when you're talking about 12 city blocks for about 12 to 13 hours, there's going to be a lot of planning involved in that. So really, the city council and your vote this evening, or the committee rather, is really just that precursory step. There is going to be a lot more dialogue and planning that goes on. I don't think it's going to commit us to this taking place. There's still going to be a lot of discussions with the city. You know, I did put some initial police department costs. That's something, as we continue this discussion with the production company, we'll probably take that back to the city. But for this evening, it's really just your initial support, I think, is how I would probably answer your question, probably.
Yeah, and that's tough to give it initial support when we don't have like everything at our, and I know this isn't necessarily at you, but it's tough to give that initial support when everything's not completely right at us, when we don't have complete costs, we don't know completely what this does to your police force, what this will do, and to say, hey, yeah, go ahead and get the permit, it feels like then I'm saying yes to the project. And I don't want to speak for any other council members up here, but at least that's how I feel. If I say, yes, let's go through and go ahead and do the permit process, then or the IDOT approval, I should say. Then I feel like we're basically saying, yeah, this is a go for him to come back up here when I'm not sure if it is. So those are my, I don't know if it's more of a statement or reservations, but that's more how I'm kind of feeling about just being like, yeah, let's go get IDOT approval, when I don't know if we know everything that's going into this project yet.
Understood.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. I have a couple concerns. One of them, the second paragraph, it states, however, the approval will be needed immediately. I don't like having to make a decision under this pressure. How come this wasn't brought months ago for this? What was the delay? I mean, I have a big issue with that. We have to decide tonight, or else we can't do it. I don't function that way.
You know, in true candor, we did have some discussions with Mr. Smith and his production company, and those were kind of parked and put on the back burner for a while. And then he came to the city just recently that he'd like to move forward with production this year. So the timeliness of this, and I understand, you know, your angst. This is really to allow him enough time to have that IDOT consideration and their permitting process.
Okay, but that's poor planning on his part, not our part. And second off, we have a proposed cost of $121,000. Is that the final cost? I don't like voting on something if I don't know how much it's gonna cost. How much are we going to pay to have a movie filmed here? I have a problem. I don't see no benefit.
Those are preliminary costs for police, a police presence only. Obviously, you know, we bear the burden of keeping the motoring public and pedestrians safe. There'll be further discussions, Mr. Sulkaitis, and then should this be tentatively approved this evening, we would come back to you for additional consideration.
And we should have all the information now, not doing step by step.
Understood.
That's not the way I function. Okay, I need the information. I need total costs. I have issue with this because I'm not in favor of spending city money for a private business to do a movie. And plus, we don't have the final dollar amount. So I struggle with this, but it's a very easy decision. I will not be supporting this. I don't have all the information. I cannot make a decision to start the process unless I have all the information. And there's other issues with notifying the businesses. Shouldn't they have been notified prior to doing this instead of after the fact? I mean, I just found out about this Friday. It's not much time for something like this. It's not the way to do it. This is not the way we should be doing this. Thank you.
Understood.
Chief, I'm going to let Administrator Heather go ahead and chime in.
Thank you so much. I know that Mr. Smith is on the line, and he can probably speak a little bit about the timing. There were some complications due to the writer's strike, and I know that he thought the project wasn't going to be able to move forward this year and then was able to pick it back up after that. So once we were aware of that from a staff level, we were aware of this timing restriction with IDOT and how long it was going to take to get through the process. So certainly recognizing there will be more pieces of this puzzle that are going to come before City Council before this is finally approved, a lot of which will result in final approval by City Council. The dollars themselves are not being approved tonight. It is just strictly in regard to the closure itself, so he can make that application to IDOT. Ultimately, IDOT will have approval if they choose to grant the approval of the closures, and we will not take further action on the closures themselves, but the dollar amounts are still going to be subject to approval of City Council.
Mr. Smith, if you can hear me, maybe you want to chime in just to kind of give your take in regards to the timing of this, and then, you know, in regards to the IDOT approval.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, just make sure you talk loud and clear.
All right, I appreciate everybody here allowing me to, be a part of this meeting. I appreciate your time and consideration. What Heather was saying, the IATSE is a film guild or a union. They represent most of the crew members that work behind the cameras on movies. And it looked like for the better part of this year that they were actually going to go on strike, much like the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild the last couple of years. And that does not look like it's going to be the case. And so, Mr. Sulkaitis, I mean, to your question or to your point about timing, it's kind of trying to thread a needle that there was a legitimate concern of a strike, and it's very hard to plan something like a movie or a feature film if you think there's going to be a work stoppage that happens. And also to your point about the business owners, you know, I'm not a stranger to St. Charles. I live actually right up the street on Park Avenue, and the business owners that I talked to today, because I do have relationships with people in the city and business owners. I'm a fellow restaurant owner as well. They were all very positive conversations. Now, our plan, or my plan specifically, because I am a resident of St. Charles, would be during this process to talk to every single business owner that is, on Main Street. And I think that, the cart and horse, situation here with IDOT, I understand the reservation about approving something that you don't quite have all the information about, but whether it be a restaurant or a film or another business or whatnot, there typically is a lot of costs and work involved, at least on our end, that you're doing, whether or not you get a liquor license or whether or not you get approval to shut down a road or something like that. it's very difficult, whether it be Netflix or myself, to have all of this information in front of you because your decision tonight affects what our budget is. It affects what the numbers are. It affects these costs. So in respect and completely understanding your point, what we're trying to accomplish today or tonight is, okay, if we can have your approval preliminarily to close Route 64 for these 4 days and 4 nights in October, then we're able to proceed with the next, step in this process. And I can also imagine that many of you, were sitting where you're sitting when Netflix was in town a couple of years ago. They all, we're not anticipating having to move on the fly in terms of, well, if we're planning on being here for 2 days or 3 days, it turns into 9 days or 10 days. And so with respect, our planning is going to be very careful. It's going to be very considerate of residents and business owners. It's just, unfortunately, with the state of Illinois, the reason why we're here tonight is that they just need a lot of time to be able to work through their process. And I agree with you. I mean, I would love to have all the information in front of you. I would love to have all these numbers and all these plans and whatnot. But this is, with the state, this is it's kind of like we're holding a parade 4 nights in a row. And I'm very sympathetic to your point. I understand it completely.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. Just obviously stand by. We're going to have some more questions. Nothing yet? Lencioni, go ahead.
Thank you. I just got questions for staff. How did we handle when the killer came through as far as reimbursements and how cost? Because let me say this, I'm curious about thinking about this right now, but I will say, I mean, initial stage, having a filmmaker in St. Charles and just creating an application process, I mean, we're here, we can make decisions, we got to move on the fly. Very supportive of that, but since we're doing this, I would like to understand how we've handled charges, reimbursements, and that financially in the past, because I want to make sure that we're being responsible going forward, although I'm supporting what we're doing today.
So the Killers, they did 100% reimbursement of the costs associated with that film. I know Chief Keegan just went over the personnel costs from the police department as well as some supplementary costs that we have for them. It wasn't about total $115,000, was that the ballpark amount. And we did, by city council approval, waive costs associated with the filming of Munger Road 1. Chief went over, I think it was $7,900. I don't have the amount in front of me, but that was approved by city council as well.
Okay, I mean, do we know, Mr. Smith, do we know, is that something that you're looking for, is to have costs waived this way? Because, I mean, that's definitely, I want to seek to understand that so we can understand what's responsible.
I can't speak to that because I unfortunately haven't been presented with the full picture yet in terms of numbers and costs and whatnot. The only numbers that I have, if we're talking about the killer and we're trying to look at, well, this was a movie production and Munger Road Part 2 is a movie production. I spent a little bit of today going through the actual, in 2010 dollars, what our production spent only in the city of St. Charles. And they were pretty substantial numbers, and they will be even more substantial numbers for this production of Munger Road Part 2. I got a little chuckle when I was going through the spreadsheet, and I saw Sears as one of the vendors that we use for the movie, and it made me think about the Charleston Mall. So to answer your question in short form, it's not appropriate for me to say one way or the other. You would appreciate that you'd want to have all the information in front of you as well in terms of those costs and whatnot. All I know is, as a pop-up business, which is what a movie actually is, The Killer and Munger Road Part 2 are completely different projects, especially for the city of St. Charles, in the sense that from a financial standpoint, we are going to spend just about every dollar we can in the city with room nights, with food, catering.
Sure. Nick, I'm gonna let you off the hook on that a little bit. I appreciate you answering the question. I'm not gonna make you negotiate on the fly, but I think that we all understand that there's negotiation to go, and we're looking for approval right now. I definitely support getting started. But in understanding, and Mr. Smith, you're speaking to this too, that there's a lot more negotiation, and I look forward to guidance from the city on that if that comes to pass.
Go ahead, Mr. Raval.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. So I just have a number of questions. First of all, this is last minute being put before us, so I do concur with Ron's comments there. It's kind of tough to make this type of decision last minute. But so my first question is, and Nick, I think you maybe kind of answered it, but you didn't, is will there be a reimbursement agreement like the Killer had? Because apparently the Killer in the minutes shows that they did have a reimbursement agreement. And I guess it sounds like you're kind of open to negotiation on that. Am I correct with that statement?
Yes, on both counts, absolutely.
Okay. So for me, the city of St. Charles and the taxpayers are not in the business to subsidize a private entity's, movie like that. I think I've got a lot of responsibilities in the Fourth Ward with infrastructure improvements, and I have no issue with you doing a movie, but as far as the costs, I think you need to pay them in full, like the Killer, the producer of the Killer paid in full. So for me, that's very important. Also, the businesses on Main Street, I think it's important to have that conversation first before we even consider closing Main Street. I talked to a couple of businesses down there, and they're concerned about the hours of closure and things like that. But my understanding is, and maybe this is for city administrator, when they filmed The Killer, did the businesses that were impacted, were they reimbursed by the production company?
There was a negotiation between the production company and those businesses. We don't have the dollars that were given to them just for the inconvenience, basically.
Okay. Nick, is that something that you're willing to do, to reimburse any businesses that may lose revenue during the filming or closing of Main Street?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I think that the easiest, most natural way, if we're shooting from the hip to reimburse a business, especially one that's in the food business, is we're going to have 50 to 70 people to feed. And I think it's just quite natural to say, instead of the Killer, who hired a caterer from Chicago and was buying food from out of state, let's put that money in the pockets of those private business owners that are in the city of St. Charles. I absolutely think that that's kind of where I would start as far as the.
So you're more about you're more about patronizing than the business with your crew than like a reimbursement. Is that kind of where you're at with that?
Well, I think it's I honestly think that this is this could turn into a pretty big discussion. I've owned Alexander's Cafe since 2016. And I have to say, and I have the numbers to prove it, every single time there's a parade in the city of St. Charles, the Alexanders and Rookies sales they're not good. They're off because there's a parade going on. And I've never, ever in the slightest thought of my mind thought, well, should I be reimbursed because there's a parade going on and Route 64 is closed because people are coming into the community enjoying? No, I think it's great. Hopefully somebody comes from out of town, drives by, sees the sign, and says, hey, this is maybe something I'll patronize later, but I can't because I can't get to the west side of St. Charles right now. So I think
Right.
that discussion is possibly a larger discussion in terms of how do you find that compensation? How do you find the financial component of that? But I think patronizing is a good place to start, yeah.
Okay, so for me, I'm hesitant of approving this tonight because I need to know that you're fully committed to reimbursing the city for the full costs of this production in the city because, for us, for me to use taxpayer dollars to subsidize a private for-profit business, I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, I don't have a problem with you making a movie here and working with staff and the businesses. I think they should be reimbursed similar to the Killer reimbursement. My other thing is would you be using facilities? Would you be using, I think in your first movie you had police vehicles. Would you be using police vehicles or anything of that nature for the movie as well? And would you be compensating, if so, would you be compensating the city for that?
You know, that's a part of the process. That was part of our proposal. You know, what we were, honestly, I'm not trying to tiptoe. I'm not trying to be vague. What we were concentrating on, Trevor Morgan is in the room. I think his wife, Paulina, is there as well. We have crunched our budget and our schedule in regards to this Route 64 closure. To that point, originally our proposal to the city was asking if we could maybe have it closed for 5 nights. When we, as a St. Charles resident, we looked at the schedule, we looked at crunching everything and said, you know what, let's see if we can get this done in 4 nights. Originally, we also thought, you know, can we have it closed from 7th Street to 7th Avenue? That would be really, really tough on businesses, truckers, residents, etc. And we slid that over to 5th Avenue. So in respect to your question, what we really, and I got to tell you, I mean, feverishly through the week, after meeting with the city on Tuesday, and again, this is our own doing, this timing is not ideal, but there was a real, actual, legitimate concern of an IATSE strike, and that really put us behind the 8 ball. And I'm sorry to do this to the councilman, to not have all the information in front of you, but our singular focus is to give us a chance to go to the state of Illinois, to go to IDOT with the permit process. While that's happening, I look forward to sitting down with every single one of you and the businesses and any residents that would have concerns, so we can talk about our process in the first movie and our process with the second movie.
And then one more question, Nick, is do you anticipate closing additional streets beyond the streets that you have here throughout your filming of the movie?
Yes, but they're very small in scope and timing wise.
Okay. So you're not sure about the funding and I understand. I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, when we're talking about this size, this type of money, I really need a commitment that you're willing to reimburse the city for the full amount and the businesses like the killer did. I understand you're not in this, it's a little bit different, but that's just for me. I mean, I'm fine with you making the movie, but that's kind of where I stand on it.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
David.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you so much. I have a question about the closure itself, because these streets, there are some intersections that I'm concerned about being closed. I assume that having a street closure, Chief, means that the intersections themselves will also be closed to the north-south traffic. So that means that 25 and 31 will not be accessible by truck traffic trying to get north and south.
Good question. I'm going to let Commander Tim O'Kasik talk about that in the detail.
Okay.
Yes. So with the detour plan that we have put in place, Route 31 at 64 would be inaccessible. There would be a detour around that. Route 25 would remain open. We would be able to have north-south traffic still on Route 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How exactly would that work?
So the barricade, basically the closure would be just west of that intersection. So traffic would be able to go every direction at 25 and 64 there, except for westbound on the 64.
And that wouldn't have any impact on the size of the vehicles that are traveling down there? I'm thinking about the volume of truck traffic, given that we in the second ward, we get a lot of concerns from residents about truck traffic going down Kirk Road, and we know that some of that is also kind of dispersed through 25 and 31. We don't have a lot of options for north-south traffic. So if you can help me understand what the weight limits and things like that.
So it all depends on the direction that they're looking to go. There are alternative truck routes that we can explore. But, you know, again, because of the urgency of this request, we haven't been able to dive into the real specifics of the alternate truck routes. But that is something that we would be able to plan for and figure out.
Okay. because I would be concerned about that for the residents that are in that area, and if you're talking about them going on to 25, I know there's a lot of residential in that area. I'm thinking about the quarry trucks that are coming north-south, and obviously nighttime is when you get a lot of transportation for people coming off of 88 and, you know, going north with their deliveries. So I think I have a lot of concerns about how we're going to allow for just commerce to be able to get where it needs to go during that time. And I know it's only October, but that's the beginning of like Christmas shipments and things like that too. So I'm just trying to think from a practical standpoint what that impact could have in a town where we don't have that many north-south options coming off of a major highway of 88. So just want to throw that out there.
Go ahead, Ed.
Chief, excuse me, this is for the Chief O'Leary. I just want to say I'm in full support of this. We did obviously do this, was it back in 2010 you said? 2010. Which is amazing that it's 14 years ago. And obviously we, you know, also took part of the Killer movie just a few years ago. My point being though, as this discussion moves forward, again, I'm in full support of this initial step. We should kind of look back. I know Heather was starting to say something, and the question came up in regards to, you know, what the actual costs were for Munger Road. I mean, just to compare apples to apples, the road closures, it seems like they might be asking for one more day versus the last time I think was 3 or 4. So we could get a picture of what worked back then, and obviously, you know, go in the direction of what could work now. But I think initially, considering timelines for everyone, I'm in full support of it, and we could also get some info regarding the Killers, but I'd really like to compare what we did the last time to now, financially and logistically. Thank you.
David, go ahead.
Chief, so the risk of sounding or beating a dead horse, so without a doubt, we say no tonight. I mean, they cannot, IDOT will not look at their application. I mean, I know you can't, you're not IDOT, but in your experience.
I mean, all I can tell you is that each and every time we seek closure of a state route in advance, obviously not in an emergency, we ask the city council to pass the resolution and it goes to the permitting office. So it's really a precursor. I can't speak to whether or not if the committee decides to deny this request, what then will happen. I don't think that's ever come up in my tenure, but maybe Mr. Peppers or Ms. McGuire might know, but I don't.
Right. And the reason I ask it, you know, this is difficult because, you know, to Mark's point, I agree. You know, I want eyes on our downtown. I want, I think it's, you know, interesting and cool to have you know, a film in our town. The cost is the thing for me that, to Brian's point as well, some commitments and, of, you know, that the city, we're not going to be, you know, pegged with this cost. And I don't want to give false hope. I think, I don't know, Mark, if you said that actually. But that's where I am at the moment. I mean, I know there's negotiations, but I mean, if we can get commitment of not liability, but burden out of pocket, thank you, for the city. Because it's true. I mean, there will be patronage. There will be, you know, I totally get that from an economic development standpoint, but we're also stewards of public money. So that's where I'm hung up on. So.
I will tell you, in the last production that we did with the Killers, we worked with our attorney, Mr. Peppers, and we entered into an agreement with the production company. They used city facilities, our old police station. There was an indemnification, a COI, and some other things that we looked at. So should we get beyond this stage, we would work with their team along with our legal team to make sure that we, whether it was reimbursement and or even just the protections of the city, we would seek a contract.
Nick, right now the next city council meeting is scheduled for the 1st. Assuming that it stays on schedule, what could you do between now and then in regards to communicating with businesses as well as coming up with some numbers for cost? Could you get both those things accomplished by the next meeting?
Absolutely. And actually, knowing that we would, you know, tonight that you would be giving us a chance, an opportunity to be able to have these 4 nights figured out in our schedule. I mean, I'm sure, you know, everybody in the room can understand that when you have a schedule for a movie, it's hard to move pieces from back to forth. It's just not, that's not, actor availability, et cetera. Answer your question, yeah, I think 100% by the next meeting, we would have a firmer grasp on those two things. I just, knowing and being in business and knowing the state of Illinois, we thought it was a good idea to present this to you tonight, just to be able to afford us the time to work with the state. And it doesn't bother me at all to do this work and to put this time in that we have. If it doesn't come to be, it doesn't come to be. That's sometimes both in the restaurant business, in life, in the film business. There's a lot of things that start and they don't go anywhere. I firmly believe in this project, but there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of people to talk to, to lay those tracks. And I'm actually very excited about that.
Okay. Any other questions up here? Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you very much. With that being said, we're looking for just basically a recommendation to move this forward. This is just in regards to having the road closed for the dates that are mentioned. This has nothing to do with agreeing to any funding or anything like that. So with that being said, I'd like a motion. Something gets moved by Lencioni, seconded by Gem. Roll call, please.
Sulkaitis?
No.
Folks?
No.
Munn?
No.
Lencioni?
Yes.
Gem?
Yes.
Petrilla?
No.
Orville?
No.
Bessner?
Yes.
All right. With the noes beat the yeses, so this motion is not moving forward right now. Next up, we have item 8A. Deputy Chief Cavallo is going to make a presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. Tonight I'm coming before you to talk about the fire department station alerting system. In coordination with Tri-Com Central Dispatch, we work to maintain a functional, effective, and redundant fire station notification system. This assures effective and efficient fire department notification and response for emergency incidents within the community. The current system in each of the 3 fire stations has been in service for nearly a decade, and some of the components even longer. Technology currently in use is outdated and unsupported. Therefore, should there be any maintenance or repairs needed, this would result in a failure in the notification system. Tri-Com Central Dispatch is currently completing the system upgrade at the dispatch center level. The fire department requests the approval of the needed technology and systems modernization upgrade to maintain the high level of public safety services we provide to the community. Staff is further seeking approval to authorize the sale and or disposal of the current equipment that's being replaced. We budgeted for this last year for about $158,000, and we're going to come in at about $142,000. Thank you. Are there any questions at this time?
Thank you. Any questions up here? Looking for a motion.
Move for approval.
Moved by Wirball, seconded by Gem. All those in favor say yes.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have public comment. Wonderful. Just state your name. We do not need your address.
Arthur Lemke, resident of St. Charles, and I was interested in the possibility of this filming arrangement, and if I had to write it down several times, it comes down to a couple of words: assumption of risk. That is, there may be another way to approach this, as much as the city should not have to assume the risk of unforeseen costs for extra days or extra work. That should be, you want to film, you pay the price. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional items from mayor, council, or staff? I do not see.
I just have one item.
Pardon me?
I just have one item.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, and this may be for John McMahon from HR or for the city administrator. I know that I asked last year about Juneteenth as a city holiday, and I know that because of the 5 unions that we have, that makes that very difficult to do as a full city holiday, but I was hoping that we could look at that again as perhaps a building holiday or an administrative holiday or some sort of more formal, other than just having a proclamation, if we could do something more formal since it is a state of Illinois holiday.
We're definitely working with our Equity and Inclusion Commission to recognize holidays and take a comprehensive look at those. One of the very simple things that we can do is recognize it similar to what we do for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, which is recognize it as a non-meeting holiday, even though city offices are open, so we can at least do that interim step with our approval of our holidays for next year while we're figuring out what to do comprehensively with all of our other holidays where city offices are closed.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
We have no need for executive session tonight. With that, I'd like a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Scrilla, seconded by Lencioni. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.